Thank you, Derek. Thanks, everyone. I have a little bit of an explanation. If you're wondering why I'm looking like a random homeless person, that was because I know everyone's asking me, why is that guy the speaker? Sure. Didn't we get the homeless Maybe in society with the homeless people, but really we're not them. Up until 4:45 tonight, I was sitting or standing at Centreport with a sandblasting machine, sandblasting a land tug for straight shipping. So I'd like to put a big thanks to the guys at Straight Shipping tonight who allowed me to have a shower. So I had a shower before I came here and I've managed to get here on time. So fantastic, fantastic effort. Okay, Derek said a little bit about me, so I'm going to skip most of this. That's what I normally look like because that's official Downers PPE, and that's me in NZTA road safety overalls. So if you can't find me, various places you will find me is on Facebook. Look for Peter Fraser, Guerrilla Economist, you'll find me there. And you'll also find me probably on the road somewhere near you, taking the lines off. So if you see a Maori guy with long hair in the middle of the road, don't run him over, because it's probably me. Okay, I want to start off with the orthodoxy, because it's actually a fairly silly place to start, and I want to move on from philosophy. But I think we need to put a line in the sand somewhere. This is not a good one. Former Minister of Agriculture, Nathan Guy. You can read it as well as I can, and you probably know that line anyway from a speech that Minister Guy gave in 2014. A couple of points I want to make about this. Firstly, I want to put a shout out to my colleague Mike Joy, who would actually say there's actually stuff that happens in rivers with the other 98% before it gets to the sea. That's actually kind of quite important. And if we look at what's happening on the Hauraki Plains, it's because that is not getting to the sea in sufficient numbers, the whole ecosystems are being destroyed. Just simple as that. Simple as that. So the first thing, we've got some really, really silly ideas to begin with. Second thing I'd like to point out is that this is obviously very, very aware of the impact of climate change. Because the things that are driving our economy are the same that drive the economy in Saudi Arabia, including oil, and also in Australia that drives minerals. So what I want to point out here, in my view, this is a very good example of dinosaur economic thinking. It's a jump back to mid-20th century. I mean, to be honest, it's, you know, he's too young to be a son of Muldoon, but it's dipping into that kind of thinking, and that's not a great place to dip. The final thing I want to get to here is a story about water storage, and the bit that we have no shortage of water, we have a shortage of water storage. I call this the Greg's or Hansel solution to economics. My mum, when I was small, used to make us jellies. Because I used to love jellies. But I still like jellies now. But the point is, the great thing about a jelly is it dry, useless crystals until you add water and instant happiness. So what we've got here is a really good example of just add water and great things happen. But the thing I want to point out, there's an implicit assumption here that firstly, the water is zero priced. Now, any economist will tell you that if you zero price something that's actually quite scarce, bad things tend to happen. That's not exactly a controversial sort of statement. But what we've got sitting underneath this is one of our major strategic resources that drives our economy the same way as Australia, and the same way as Saudi Arabia, and the same way as all of that sort of stuff. Hey, it's free. And it's free because it's free for farmers. Good luck, farmers. So I'll jump on to the next slide. Now that sounds great, but the question, is it? Now, I titled this presentation Water Storage, you know, no-brainer or just plain stupid. And I purposely put that dichotomy in place because if we look at the previous slide, it is a no-brainer. So the point is, if it's a no-brainer, you don't have to think about it because it's obviously such a good idea. So the idea of putting any type of analysis on it, let alone economic analysis, you obviously don't need to do it because it's a no-brainer. It stands to reason. Why do you do it? Because it's a no-brainer. Why is it a no-brainer? Because Nathan said so. Why did Nathan say so? Because he went to Saudi Arabia. Look what happened the last time the National Party went to Saudi Arabia. It didn't end well. So there are some lessons there that are probably not the ones we want to be learning. Okay, nice simple Marshall 1890 vintage, pretty good stuff. But let's pull through some of the problems we've got here. The first problem we've got when we're looking at dams is infrastructure costs. Now the problem we have with dams in New Zealand really comes down to our topography and our geography, in that we have fairly short, fast-flowing rivers, and we have pretty nasty hills, which are earthquake-prone, and they're basically built out of woodlands. So if you want to go and build a dam in New Zealand, and we've built over the years lots and lots of dams, so it's absolutely perfectly possible dams in New Zealand, it's really, really expensive. Hey, you can't build a versatile garage in Auckland for $1 million now. So, you know, be quite serious. The infrastructure costs of these things are really, really significant. I want to come back to that. So when we're thinking about this no-brainer stuff, so we don't have to do any analytics, so we don't have to do any hard thinking, the problem we've got here, you've got infrastructure costs are really, really big. The second thing that comes out of it is that's just the upfront costs. But dams have a really, really good record of going over budget and going substantially over budget. I mean, Waimea, when I first started looking at the Waimea Dam, which is basically a glorified swimming pool, it was about $75 million. And that was about 3 years ago. And that's before they even turned a single spade of soil. It then magically went up to 83 million. And that was on a P95 probability that that was going to be the final price. Now, obviously that wasn't the final price. And then it blew out to $104 million. At which point the council decided to vote against it. Until Shane Jones and the government leaned on the council and they came up with the wrong answer, so they had another vote again 2 weeks later, which mysteriously they reversed the numbers. That thing has only been going not even 6 months. It's ballooned out to 130 million already. It'll be 150 million by the end of the year. It'll be a 200 million project by the time next year we will have. So these things are really, really expensive. Dams also have economies of scale. They're a bit like ships, in that the square cube rule runs. And again, you're smart people, so I'll be really, really simple about this, is that if you've got a box that's 1 metre by 1 metre by 1 metre, it's 1 cubic metre. Now if you double the inputs, 2 metres by 2 metres by 2 metres, you get 8. And so the rule here is that, firstly, because dams are so expensive, and because you've got economies of scale, if you're going to build one, you want to build a big one. Because if you're building a big one, you've got more water to amortise your costs over. So this is the thing, the current government basically got rid of the previous government's schemes and said, we don't do industrial scale dams. The problem is, they've got to be industrial scale dams to be vaguely viable. And I then want to get to this thing called equilibrium price. And hey, this is really where the rubber hits the road. And this is where I can look at Ruataniwha, I can look at Waimea, I can look at the Wairarapa ones, and they're slightly different dogs, exactly the same fleas. And the fleas, the problem is this is it in a nutshell. What you need is a construction cost that is low enough, or what you need is, oh, sorry, I'll rephrase that. What you need is a water price that is high enough to attract investors. Because they're the ones that will turn up with the money and build a dam. But it's got to be low enough that it's worthwhile for farmers to actually go and buy the water and do whatever they want to do with it. Now, back in Econ Monday, that's called a market price. And what I'm going to show you here is getting that is really, really difficult. And if there's one thing I want you to take home tonight, is that we have spent, and when I talk about we, I'm talking about a mixture of ratepayers and taxpayers, they spent $25 million in Hawke's Bay and didn't turn a single, shovel of soil. Because no one actually asked the question, well, they did ask the question originally, but they just ignored it, about could the farmers afford the water? No, they couldn't. In the Waimea case, the farmers couldn't afford the water, so ratepayers and taxpayers basically subsidised it. That's how they got it. And what I'm going to show you when we look at the Wairarapa scheme a little bit later on is that that's perfectly viable as long as taxpayers pay for it. Because it's amazing. If it's free, everything works. But if it's not, it's not. And that's why all these things, these are a no-brainer. I mean, this is not hard analysis. Can farmers afford to buy the water? Not a tough question. In the Wairarapa, they put out a document about 3 years ago called The Profitability of Agriculture in the Wairarapa under Irrigation. And there's a little line on about page 2, and they said, for the purposes of this report, the water price is assumed to be zero. So it's like saying the economics of running a taxi company in the Wairarapa, with a little thing saying, and the assumption is the petrol price is zero. And amazingly, the report found that all these things were fantastic.
So that's a form of subsidy of farms.
It is. It's exactly what it is. Okay, so if we're now going to say, well, it's not just a no-brainer, and we have to do a little bit of thinking, a little bit of analytics, so let's do a little bit of analytics. So what would make a successful dam? Because I'm not anti-dam. I mean, I'm an economist. I go and measure things. So it could be a stadium, it could be a new town hall, it could be a motorway. Look, there's lots of infrastructure projects that come out there, and you basically go through some processes and you say, well, do they stack up and do they not stack up? So it's not about, is this intrinsically good or intrinsically bad? Does this proposal actually make any sense? That's what we do. Now, the first thing what you need is lots and lots of cheap water. This is how you get cheap water. Okay. I'm going to do a comparison between Apua and Waimea. Because Apua works. Apua works really, really well. Now, this is the quick and dirty way that I go and do a calculation because it costs nothing, it's really quick, and it gives you a pretty good answer. Apua has got what I call a small front gate and a big backyard. So if you imagine that, the first slide on the front was actually Apua. The dam at the front of it is an earthen dam, it's not very big. But the catchment area behind it is absolutely enormous. So it holds an incredibly huge amount of water. So what you've got is, in today's money, it would have cost about 65 million to build. And it holds 74 million cubic metres of water. So those are just two numbers. Now what I've done here is I've just used 8% as a cost of capital. But hey, you can use any cost of capital you want. Now the reason I've used 8%, if anybody asks, is that generally, with dams in New Zealand, the private sector hasn't want to go anywhere near them. So quasi-government sector money has been pushed in there, such as ACC and Super Fund and that sort of thing. They've been leaned on. So my good mate back in the load at ACC, who's a very, very smart guy by the way, he will not invest in anything unless it gives at least an 8% return. But hey, look, you can do the same calculation with any number you want. So I'm just using 8% as an example. But what it comes out at is if you can replicate the Apua somewhere over at Mount Cook or something like that, you get water at 7 cents a cubic metre. So that's just a number, 7 cents a cubic metre. Now, the median water price for irrigation in New Zealand is 14. And Expensive water would be early 20s, maybe 24, 25 if it's delivered to your gauge and pressurised and that sort of thing. But it really starts hard, getting stuff hard much more than about 25 cents. So at 7 cents, to be honest, you can irrigate a beach and put cows on it, which is what we do in Canterbury. Now let's look at Waimea. Now this is the one that's also a no-brainer. This one's got a big front gate and a small backyard. So you can look at the comparison there. Firstly, it's $130 million so far. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, it's not going to go any higher. So the first thing you notice, it's actually twice as expensive as the other one. Yet it holds 5.5 times less water. So we run the same calculation. Oh, what is it? 80 cents. The farmers are barely paying 30 because you're paying the rest. And the ratepayers of Richmond are paying the rest. Now, remember I said about the cost overruns? The deal is that the first $1.5 million of cost overruns were picked up by the irrigators. Anything after that were picked up by the ratepayers. And that was completely uncapped. So if anyone has got shares in the construction company that's currently building the Waimea Dam, hold them. Whatever you do, don't sell them. Because they have got absolutely zero incentive to bring that thing on time, on budget, because all the costs are going to be socialised. Yep.
Sorry, that's 80 cents per cubic metre.
80 cents per cubic metre. Yeah, and all I've done there is I've just gone and said $65 million times by 0.8, which is 8%. That gives me a number, divided into 74 million cubes. So I'm not paying it back. I'm almost treating it as if it was a perpetual bond. That's effectively how I treated it. So it gives me a quick and dirty, feeling of what's the ballpark of the price. But if you'd seen it really quickly, it basically had the point I made earlier that nationally the water price is about 14 cents, and the range cheapest water is about 2 cents, and it goes up to about 24, 25. So that's the range we're currently doing. So the second thing that's really important, and this is what I call the anchor tenant problem. So I'm going to go and pop that out here. The comparison I make with a dam and a command area that it irrigates, whether it be 5,000 hectares or 10,000 hectares or 25,000 hectares, doesn't really matter. If you imagine that area is akin to a large format shopping centre or a shopping mall. Now to make a shopping mall work, you need to have an anchor tenant, a really big format store, which then the small stores go and club themselves around. So that's normally something like a warehouse, a minor 10 mega, a countdown, something like that, a farmer's. So you have, or we may have a number of large stores like that. So they're what I call the anchor tenant. And they're the ones that actually make it viable. So when you're looking at these large infrastructure schemes, remember a dam is basically a whole lot of money up front, and then you basically try and get the money back over time. That's the gist of how dams work. So what you need is the equivalent of an anchor tenant to make the dam work. Who's going to be the customer that comes in and gets most of your water? Well, that in New Zealand has always been the dairy industry. And the reason for this is twofold. Firstly, dairy is hugely inefficient user of water. And if you're a seller of water, they're hugely inefficient users of water. They're exactly the customers you want because they want lots of water. It's just fantastic. So that's the first thing. You need, the same as your anchor tenant, it will take a lot of water. The second thing is it takes lots of water early. And the reason it takes lots of water early is because we've allowed dairy conversions in completely stupid places. And that if there had been a road halfway up Mount Cook, you would have found some cows up there because some Dutchman would have put them there because it was cheap land, because that's what they like. So the issue we've got here is when you can, how do you make the money? You don't make the money out of the water, you make the money out of the capital gain from doing the conversion of whatever it was before into an irrigated dairy farm. So what it's been is basically like an agricultural version of the block, where you just go and find a bit of land, irrigate the living daylights out of it, chuck lots of nitrogen and just add cows. And that's how you make a lot of money. And that's why, I mean, Ruataniwha was being advertised on the basis by the Hawke's Bay Regional Council on the capital gains farmers could make on buying dry stock land and converting it to dairy. Now, when we talk about an anchor tenant, it's worthwhile to give some percentages here. The Opua scheme is about 54% dairy. If we go to the proposed Hanua scheme, which has failed, that was about 55–56% dairy. Ruataniwha was slightly smaller, that was about 38–39% dairy. And when we go to the Wairarapa, which is just fantastic dairy country, because it's just so dry, that was 62.5% dairy. So you can see here that for these things to work, they need someone that will come along and take a whole lot of water really early, and the dairy industry has been the one that can do it. The problem we've got is it's gone. They were the anchor tenant of choice, but they're gone. So this is a real challenge we have, that when you're building these schemes, who's going to turn up and buy the water? Notwithstanding the earlier question is, can people afford to buy the water in the first place?
Sorry, could you clarify what God means in this context?
Sorry?
Dairy is gone.
Dairy is gone. When I say dairy is gone, what I'm referring to there is, I think it's fair to say in dairy numbers, New Zealand's at peak health. And the ability to actually expand into any more marginal areas, whether it be for economic reasons or environmental reasons, you just can't do it. So let's say that they put the 10,000 hectares of irrigation into the Wairarapa. I'd argue at the moment they could not put dairy in there simply because of the tightening of the restrictions around fresh water. So what I'm saying is, does that answer your question?
Yes.
So then the question comes, how do you sell a lemon? You know, because these things, as I said, they're a dog with different fleas. Sorry, different dogs, same fleas. So how do you sell one of these things? First thing you need to have is local boosters. Generally a mayor or a former mayor, who is a good soul of the earth kind of guy, and 99.99% of the time it's a guy, and has actually got a vision about development. So that's what you absolutely need to have first. Add to that a whole industry rent seekers. $25 million flushed down the toilet in Hawke's Bay. $11 million until Shane Jones put another $7 million into the Wairarapa, and that's just a complete loser. So, you know, this is serious amounts of money. If you're a damn consultant, this is the place you want to be. Because even if they don't get built, you make an absolute fortune writing reports that never get read. And it's really easy, because the reports you write don't have to have things in there like what a water price is, but you can still say the system works without a water price.
Has the Wairarapa one been cancelled?
No, it's back again.
It's what?
It's back.
So it's going ahead?
It's not going ahead, but now what they've given, or what Shane Jones has given, is $7 million to basically do further investigations. So it's, I'll get to it in a minute. It's like one of those zombies that just will not stay in the ground. But it should have been left there a long time ago. Okay, these are the other favourites I like. Cue a story about drought proofing. This is the biggest crop under the sun. When Andrew McFarlane is an agricultural consultant and a big supporter of irrigation. As you can imagine, Andrew and I don't get on very well. Andrew's also on the Fonterra board, and they consider me as the Antichrist, so that's even more reason why. But there's one thing that Andrew and I absolutely agree on. You do not use water storage for drought proofing. You use water storage to intensify your farming system. That's what you use it for. And this is where it takes just a little bit of thinking to see that this whole thing about drought proofing is stupid. So let's say your drought happens at various severities, every 5 years or 6 years or 10 years or 2, whatever the hell it is. You know, it's not an every year event. But as soon as you get water storage and you buy into water storage, you pay for it every single year, whether you need it or not. And so that's the reason it doesn't work as a drought proofer. Because it's like insurance, which is too expensive. Now, what you end up doing is that if you buy the money, you intensify your farm. But if you intensify your farm, you're actually making it not more resilient, you're making it less resilient. Because what suddenly happens is, let's say you've gone and managed one risk, and I'll use dairy as an example. Let's say you've gone and managed this risk about droughts and then gone and intensified your farms and got cows on top of each other and all that sort of thing like that. Here's the problem. You've just increased your cost structure. And while you've gone and solved one problem, and I don't believe you have in terms of a climate or a water risk, you are now more greatly exposed to the international fluctuations of what the international milk price is. When a colleague of mine was doing the modelling for Ruataniwha, the water costs that the farmers had to pay for, they would have needed a milk price close to $10 a kilo right here, and are probably going to have a milk price of about $7.20. We have never ever had a milk price of $10. But if you bought that water, you need a milk price of $10 every single year before you stop losing money. Now, guess how many dairy farmers actually bought that water? None. Because they are completely stupid. And they could do the calculations themselves. That's one of the key reasons why that dam failed. Is that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, they said, this is the last chance to get water. And no one bought the water. This is the last chance to get water. Get water. Then they discounted the water. And last chance to get water. They extended it 8 times. And they still didn't get an even modest amount of pre-sales. So that's the first thing about drought proofing. Next favourite one is climate change. What I find incredible is that farmers, ex-local mayors and male politicians who do not believe in climate change at all suddenly see climate change as a fantastic reason to spend somebody else's money to pour a whole lot of concrete to build a dam that doesn't make sense because it's a no-brainer. And so, let's just stop here. Let's look at the Wairarapa as an example. If it's increasingly going to get dry with climate change and that sort of thing, why on earth would you put a water-hungry land use that's going to get more water-hungry and worse over time? Why would you do that? But that's exactly $7 million that I'm into. And the last one is actually my favourite. You've got to have an urban water crisis. And I mean, with Waimea down at Richmond, what the former mayor was saying last summer was, if we don't build this dam, I cannot guarantee in the next 5 years you'll be able to have showers in summer. I just don't think there's enough water. This is a mayor who had 40% of the water, or the reticulated water in town, leaking through the pipes. We've got the same thing happening in the Wairarapa at the moment. Masterton loses 5 million litres of water in its pipes. Remember, there's only about 20,000 people there. They don't lose that a year. They don't use that a month or a week. They lose that every single day. And so, for the boosters, a much better thing to do, rather than fix your pipes, is build a great big dam. And the way that you stop your urban people complaining about it is they say, if you don't build this dam, you don't get a shower. And this is the one I love, economic development. The fact that farmers can't afford to buy the water tends to slow that down a bit. But, you know, I've sat in halls in Waipakarau and listened to agricultural rent seekers get up. And this is almost the way they go. Does anyone here love their children? Do you love your children? Because you look like good people, and I'm pretty sure you do. So if you actually love your children, you will want them, when they grow older, to be here in this community, part of this community. Which means they need to have jobs. And if they're going to have jobs, you need to have this game. So if you love your children, you will want this game. And that's the sort of crap that's put out all over New Zealand. And I've sat in halls and listened to it again and again. Okay, I now want to go a little bit local and hone in on a zombie dam that refuses to die. So I want to use the same sort of, very simple, quick and dirty back of the envelope calculations I did earlier in the piece. So this one is 18 million. Now remember what we had with Waimea, that was 13 million. This one, they reckon it's going to cost 120. I don't think it will, but hey, look, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, 120. Now that comes out at 53 cents per cubic metre. Now, the issue is that what they're looking at doing is putting it's in Black Creek, and it's Whakauae, and from memory it is northwest of Masterton. And it would actually have a command area that would have, it's like a crescent shape that would go from basically west of Masterton, not quite down to Carterton, but then would sort of curve around in a crescent to the north of Masterton.
Is it up in the ranges?
Yeah, it's basically terraces. Now, the problem is, and thank you, because that's a really good question, Mike, is that if the water's under the Tauruas, it's not actually on your farm. So what you need to have is a distribution system that goes alongside it. So what I then did is, Ruataniwha, that was a distributed scheme. So I just said, well, what's roughly the cost per hectare of putting a distributed scheme in? And just scaled it down for a slightly smaller scheme. Well, that's another 130 million. So that takes us to $1.11 per week. That's feeling pretty expensive. And as I said, all the workings done so far has assumed that for every 10,000 hectares irrigated with Wairarapa, 62% of it will be going to dairy. Now the question I've got is, we've already had the conversation that dairy's gone. What's going to replace it? And this is where I get these fantastic things about, this is not about dairy, this is about other stuff. And you kind of say what the other stuff are, and they tend to struggle on that. But here's some example. I mean, New Zealand's got one of the leading hop industries in the world, mainly because we have a very, very low disease rate, and so when you're in, and we've actually got some really interesting plant varieties. So if you're the craft brewers, a lot of New Zealand hops are really, really highly priced. So it's a really cool industry. 700 hectares national. Our berry food industry, I kind of like berries, and I'm talking about the course that's on the Wainui Hill, sorry, the Blackberry on the Wainui Hill. That's less than 1,000 hectares national. If we look at stone fruit, not very good in the Wairarapa, but just as an example, stone fruit coverage in New Zealand, 3,000 hectares. They talk about radishes and radish seeds because we actually produce most of the radish seeds in New Zealand. The total specialised seed industry in New Zealand is 7,000 hectares. If you put 10,000 hectares of radish seeds in, what do you think is going to happen to the radish seed price? I don't think this is very tough. If you look at New Zealand's pit food industry, which is actually going really, really well, apples in particular are going really well at the moment, that's 10,000 hectares. That's nationally. Kiwi fruit, 13,000. That's all it is. Dairy, 2.1 million. So that's why dairying was always the anti-tenant, because these other things, are basically tiny. And if you think about it, and this is a point that the plant-based foods people say, and I'm just reflecting it in a slightly different way. And what they say is that to get a kilogram of protein out of animal protein takes a whole lot of land. But to get it out of plant protein actually doesn't take very much land. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. So 10,000 hectares of irrigated land for something that's not dairy is actually a hell of a lot of land nationally. What are you going to do with it? I then want to turn it around the other way, because this is about future-proofing the Wairarapa, drought-proofing our farms, and making them more resilient to climate change. Oh, and it's going to fix the urban water problem in Masterton and Cardiff at the same time. 460,000 hectares of agricultural land that potentially, I'm talking about stuff we put forestry on in the Wairarapa. This is roughly 2%. So my question is, if we're worried about resilience, should you be worried about around 98%? Or why just leave it as it is?
2% of what?
Sorry?
2% of what?
10,000 hectares of irrigated is about 2% of 460,000 hectares of agricultural land.
In the water.
In the water. Yeah. So, does that answer your question?
That's agricultural land for what use?
That's class 1 through to 6.
That doesn't mean a big use.
Basically, it means flat up to stuff which is what
You've got what, sheep and beef or
it ranges from flat stuff, you can put pretty much anything on. And effectively, the more steep it gets, the fewer options you've got. And really steep stuff, you either forestry, and really steep stuff basically goes to the conservation state. You can't follow it.
There's a lot of that land where.
Yeah, awful number. Yeah. So what I'm saying here is that if the argument that's being made is that this scheme makes our land and farming and the economy and all the stuff more resilient, you've just told me a story about 2% of the trust. And what I'm just pointing out is, what about that 98? Section of that land. And as I've said, Masterton loses, I'll put it in cubic metres, 5,000 a day. And when we get to the towns, New Zealanders tend to be really high users of water. I'm now going to urban water use. And in Wellington, because all I do is just go to the Greater Wellington side, how much water do you use, what's the population, divide 1 good day, get enough. So the average number is about 250 litres a person a year. 250 litres per person per day, my mistake. That's actually really high. That's really high. If you look and say what's the equivalent figure in Europe, they're down around 150. And they think that's high, and they're sort of aiming for a figure of around 2030 of around 130 litres, which is not quite half of what we're doing. So add on the fact that we are quite profligate users of water in the first place. We have really leaky infrastructure. And I sort of did a bit of a calculation, and I sort of said, how much is it losing over the year? And remember this dam in the Wairarapa is going to hold about 18 million cubic metres. This Masterton loses about 1.8, so it loses about 1%. So even if you didn't fix the pipes and you took all of the water from Masterton from the dam, you're likely to make much more than 2% of the water. So this whole thing about urban water is just a complete crock. Because what you've got to remember is that the urban water in comparison to your use of irrigated water in farms is infinitesimal. Now, I think that there is an option around the other 98%, but I think there's an option around 100%. And I'm personally a big fan of water storage. I personally think that the best water storage is actually having decent soils and having soils that actually act like a sponge. And there's a lot of really good stuff about how you do things where you don't have your soils drying out. I think there's actually some really good ideas about different forages you can have. Perish the thought there may even be some alternative land use that doesn't involve something that goes moo in exactly the wrong place where it shouldn't have been put there in the first place. So I'm not trying to argue which is the thing which Rich normally is going to back to me. Oh, Peter, you just don't like, you're anti-farmer, you hate farmers, and we're going to go and live like 14th century peasants. No, I don't live like a 14th century peasant. I'm saying there's alternatives to industrial scale irrigation, which doesn't make any economic sense, but are being supported because someone that can't think any harder thinks it's a no-brainer because the water's free. So, keeping zombies on the ground. How do we stop these crazy things from coming up again and just keeping on? I think the simplest thing to do is, I picked up my former colleagues in MAF about 3 years ago, because they gave more money to the Wairarapa scheme, and I read their application and got it under the Official Information Act, and the application was appalling. It was absolutely appalling. And all that is, they just obviously they didn't even read it. Because the scheme, according to their own numbers in there, it made absolutely no sense. Yet they still gave it money. So a really simple thing to do is run the test that I did, say, how much water is in this dam, how much is it going to cost, what's our cost of capital, times it into the figure, divided by the other figure, gives an indicative number. If it's anything more than 10 cents, give up now. If it's anything more than 20 cents, definitely give up now. It's that simple. That's not a hard test to do. So that's the first thing I'll do. And that's the initial, and also what I call the reoccurring off-ramps. Jerry made a point earlier about project evaluation, and I did a bit of a mention of that earlier about what economists do. And this is something which I think economists need to do a lot better. Here's the problem with the Wellington Regional Council. Their policy is they will continue to support this dam until it is investment ready. My argument is it never ever will be investment ready. So what you're doing is keeping on throwing money into something that will never ever be ready. You've got no off-ramp. And if they hadn't just said, look, the cost of this thing has got out of control, it's no longer viable, we stop. There's no stopping mechanism. There's no off-ramp. Second thing, get rid of the loose government money. What really disappoints me about this government is that they came in on a platform about water, they got rid of Crown irrigation, and then effectively recreated it through Shane Jones.
And the word loose applies rather well to them.
So get rid of loose government money.
Yes.
And I think the most important thing, and this is the one and I purposely ended on this one here, is as a nation we have to start treating fresh water with respect, rather than saying it's free, so let's put it through a cow, which is what we do now. And anything that's not put through a cow is clearly wasted because it's gone to sea. And it's just sheer madness. Now, I want to do a retrospect of this in terms of New Zealand's development, because way back in the day of economic history, and some of the lessons actually sort of came off. And here's a story about New Zealand's economic development, and I'll start from the European arrival here around the turn of the 19th century. First thing we did was we cashed in the seals. The second thing we did, we cashed in the whales. After we cashed in the whales, we then cashed in the cowrie. We then cashed in the gold, and we then cashed in the fertility of the natural grasslands. But hey, that's not a problem, because we then stole the phosphate from Nauru, and we then used that to cash in our hill country. Our hill country. And if you think of a whole second grasslands revolution, where a whole lot of people my grandfather's age, who previously had a job dropping stuff on Germany, finding that that particular occupation no longer was paying very well, decided to drop some stuff on my other grandfather's farm. In fact, what he wanted to do was always, they dropped it on the neighbour's farm when it was blowing northerly, because it always blow on his farm. We always quite like that. So we cashed in our hill country. We cashed in our natural gas. What we're now doing, we're cashing in our water resource. That's what we're doing. And so, conclusion. Everyone loves a tour. I mean, there is actually a tour that goes on where Irrigation New Zealand picks up all these good and great local councillors and puts them on a bus and takes them out to a tour, and there's a picture of them. There used to be a picture on the Wairarapa site of all these councillors standing smiley faced, big thumbs up on the Apua Dam. And they get taken down there and they get sold the story that if you just had a dam like this, you could be the next Apua. In fact, I was also told in a farming meeting in Central Hawke's Bay in Whakauae that Ashburton got a Bunnings before Christchurch. And if that's not a reason not to love irrigation, I don't know what is. So the problem is, I can hear the ghost of Mike Joy telling me that Apua environmentally is a complete disaster. And I'm purposely putting that to one side for a moment because I'm trying to give the dam people at least a semblance of credit. Problem is, Apua can't be replicated. That's the problem. You can't get the Apua miracle.
Secondly, ran out of water actually a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah, they ran out of water. I mean, and this is the whole thing about we're going to build a dam to intensify our farms and therefore make our systems more resilient, and then it runs out of water. Fantastic.
In a drought.
Yep. So beware of snake oil salesmen. Plenty of them out there. And the critical thing I'll say is, if what you want is economic development, and I don't have a problem with economic development because I'm an economist, I kind of quite like that. There are better alternatives than the sort of stuff that the Soviet Union did by draining the Ural Sea to actually go and build cotton and things like that, which is just all big environmental disasters. All we're doing is smaller scale versions of the same stew. But it is still stew. So I want to say there's no brainer here, because you'd have to be pretty brainless to do these. But hey, we have a lot of brainless people, and they're very powerful, and they are willing to spend other people's money. So on that basis, I should have questions.